Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Glorifa Romero. Today, the topic of my presentation is all about the evaluation of thesis or dissertation. But before I begin to my discussion deeper, let me first define what is evaluation and what is thesis or dissertation all about. So, evaluation is a structured interpretation and giving of meaning to predicted or actual impact of proposal or results, while a thesis or dissertation is about a document submitted in support of candidature for an academic degree or professional qualification presenting the author's research and findings. Generally, a thesis or dissertation has to be defended before a panel of examiners and then submitted to the proper authorities for acceptance as a piece of scholarly works. So yes, you will heard the word a piece of scholarly work, right? So this means that a thesis or dissertation manuscript must contain an essential and pertinent information regarding the study, and it should be based on fact. So hence, there should be some guidelines in evaluating a thesis or dissertation. The following are offered to be the general criteria in judging the worthiness of thesis or dissertation. Okay, so the first thing that will be scrutinized when it comes to your thesis or dissertation will be the subject and the problems. So the subject will be the question. So in number 1, it states that is the subject significant, timely, and current issue? Yes, of course, it should be. Your study or your subject is imperative into this generation. Because if the issue or problems happen in 1930s, it will become useless and have encountered a lot of conflicts. Therefore, the study should be timely, currently happening to the people either in business, jobs, education, and so on. In number 2 question, is it clearly delimited but big enough for making valid generalization? Of course, in every type of research or in any type of thesis or dissertation, basically that's how we follow the rule of SMART. So SMART means that it should be specific, measurable, attainable, time-bound, and realistic. Your study must not be general or big enough. So technically, you should focus into a certain group of people or a certain group of organization so that you could be able to create valid generalization and could be able to finish the manuscript. The third question is that, is the title appropriate for the subject? Yes, of course. The title should contain or give a hint to the reader that what particular problem is being studied, meaning the title should give a hint of what is the problem being studied by the researcher. The last number is the number 4. Are the sub-problem specific, clear, and unequivocal? So meaning, if you created your general and specific problem, or in your specific problem, you have to make it specific, clear, asking for something, not a double meaning, or using not a double meaning words in your problems to avoid conflict. So the next thing that will be, or the panel member just so will scrutinize, is the design of your study. So normally, in most of the research's thesis or dissertation, the research design normally falls under chapter 3. Okay. But of course, in other format of research, like for example, the Imran format, it normally has 4 chapter. It's something like the design is on the chapter 2. So the question that will be scrutinized or that will check by the panel members basically is the research methodology appropriate? Okay, meaning what particular methodology are you going to use? Generally, we have quantitative and qualitative and mixed method research methodology. But of course, you have to clear it out on your decision of the chapter 3 or the research design. What particular quantitative form of study you are using? Is it descriptive, correlational, and other things? So if you are working on a quantitative study, so you have to something like discuss it clearly so that the research design suffice on the problem being raised under chapter 1. So meaning the methodology that you're going to use, they also would be able to provide an answer for the problems or for the research problems. So the next one is the design clear and in accordance with scientific method of research. Okay, so meaning as I said earlier that you have to discuss it clearly. Okay, so it doesn't matter how long it is as long as you discuss it clearly and with completeness, and it should be scientific. So of course, as I said earlier, part of our presentation, basically a research is a piece of scholarly work. So meaning the method that you're going to use or we're going to use should be based on scientific or scientific procedure. So the next one is that is the report prepared carefully following acceptable format and mechanics? So this means that have you written the design of your study based on something like what is prescribed by the school, or something like you're writing it based on the general acceptable format? Okay, so the next one are the document adequate and proper done. Of course, all the content of the research design or research methodology must be discussed just on particular chapter. So basically, not just only the research design but also the sampling, the population, the research locale, the data gathering procedure, the statistical method or the statistical treatment of data, ethical consideration, and other things, so that the prescribed format required by our schools are properly done. Okay, the third part will be the recommendation. Of course, after you do the conclusion, the next thing that you have to write as a researcher basically is the recommendation. Okay, so maybe recommendation for future studies, or maybe a recommendation to improve the quality of something, etc. So, are the recommendation based upon the findings and conclusion? Of course, all recommendation just so much be based just on your findings and recommendation. You cannot recommend something that is not part of your study. So the next question, are they feasible, practical, and attainable? So, of course, you cannot recommend that a particular student should study on Pluto, okay? So that's not feasible, that's not practical, or for students to increase their level of capability in learning mathematics, they have to visit Saturn. So it's not feasible. So it's something like you have to recommend something which is feasible, which is attainable within the locality of your respondents. The next question, are they action-oriented? Of course, they recommend action to remedy unfavorable condition discovered. So basically, recommendation should be the one being recommended or something like the action planned or reduction being recommended. So it can be created or can be done by those people. Like for instance, you are recommending a training program for teacher in your studies, or you are recommending something like a remedial classes for student. So it's something like it should be actual oriented that can be done through by the particular respondents. This will be the last question. Are they limited only to the subject of the study but recommend further research at the same time? Okay, so although this will be the future studies, you can recommend to the future researcher that they could be able to conduct other studies relative to your study in their certain locality or in their particular provinces. So for them to be able to check if, for instance, we have the same result, it's something like that. So those are the general criteria that will be evaluated by the panel members. So whether it is for thesis or dissertation manuscript. That would be all for my part. Thank you and God bless everyone.